Hi everyone. I wanted to share something that happened to me last year. Basically, I got really, really sick. It started off as just like a cough, and the cough got a lot worse whenever I would lie down, and I'd be coughing all night, and I just couldn't get any sleep. And this went on for days and days. So I was just getting progressively more exhausted. And I had some other stresses on at the time. I was having some relationship issues, which were causing me a lot of heartache. And in addition to that, I had a couple of DJ gigs that were also stressing me out. I don't normally get stressed out over DJ gigs, but these were being filmed and there was quite a lot of fuss around them, and it was just all a bit much for me at that time. Anyway, I went to one of my gigs and they offered me like an absolutely epic bar tab. And normally I don't drink, I just give the tab to my friends. But because of the stress and because I was feeling so ill and tired, I just thought, okay, I'll have a couple of drinks. I might just take the edge of things. And basically, a couple of drinks led to more drinks, and by the end of the night, I was absolutely, completely trashed. Suffice to say, like I had an amazing gig; it couldn't have gone any better, and I was really on a high at the end of it. I was feeling great, and we decided, me and my friends, to go to another party. So we went to that. We were dancing all night, and that was really fun. And then we found ourselves at some after party that we just sort of walked by, and that was really fun, and there was more drinking and the rest. And actually I didn't sleep that night and went out again, and this went on for like a few days. So I hadn't done this in a while, a really long while, and it just felt like it was a bit of fun and it was harmless. I noticed that my cough had completely gone, and I thought I must have just sort of blown it out, with all this indulgence. And I expected that I would feel bad for, a couple of days of hangover and whatnot, which I did. But then what happened after that was that things didn't really improve. In fact, I started to feel really, really weird. And I noticed one day, a few days later, that I was freezing. I was just so cold, and it was really hot outside. But I was having to put on a coat and jacket, scarf, all the rest of it. And I just felt like weird. That was the best word for it. Just really, really strange. I went to see my neighbour, and I just burst into tears. And I didn't know why. So I was just really out of sorts. Anyway, I thought maybe this is just a virus that I haven't kicked from before. I didn't freak out too much about it. But then, like, days passed, week passed, 2 weeks passed, and things just got progressively worse and worse. And, I've got a list of the symptoms here. And the biggest symptom was that no matter how much like I was sleeping, it didn't make any difference to my exhaustion. I just felt absolutely exhausted, like 24/7. I also found it difficult to sleep. Like I was just lying there. It was horrible. I've got pains in my body from a motorbike accident like 10, 11 years ago. They're annoying, but, they're not unbearable. But this would like amplify those pains at points. I get headaches, sore throat. My eyes were too tired to focus, so they were blurry. Like most of the time, everything was blurry. This really was horrible. I had terrible problems focusing mentally as well. I couldn't do more than one thing at the time. My memory was atrocious. I was getting hot flushes, and sometimes I was absolutely boiling. Other times I was absolutely freezing, but never the right temperature, basically. Dizziness, horrible dizziness, a lack of appetite. I didn't have the strength to eat, so I had to blend all my food. I got muscle spasms, tearful, like I said, for no apparent reason. I didn't have the energy to deal with people. Normally I'm really sociable, but I just couldn't cope with it. Terrible thirst. I was thirsty like all the time, no matter how much I drank. Strange sensations walking, sensitivity to noise and light, even though I really did crave to be outside in the sun. Often I just had to close my eyes. And just this brain fog, like horrible brain fog is the best word for it. And, it was so bad that, like, at times I would just want to go and sit by this. There was a massive tree about 3 minutes from my house, and I intuitively felt that sitting by this tree was like the best thing I could do. and I would try to make it to the tree, and I would walk like a minute and a half out of my house, and I would have to lie down on the grass outside, maybe for like even I remember one day it was 4 hours just to get up to make it the rest of the minute and a half to the tree. And then when I got to this tree, I would just sort of sit there like a vegetable all day long, just sort of staring. It was really, really, really bad. And after like a couple of months, the pains in my body got worse. They became excruciating. I would get like attacks of it, and it was unbearable. I felt like completely suicidal with that pain. And on top of that, I was terrified. Like I was terrified because I didn't see it improving. I couldn't work. I had to reserve like my energy for the most important jobs, DJing jobs, and I had to cancel the rest. It was like having a battery that's, normally 100% full. Now it was like 20, 15% full. So, I would have to save everything I had just for these really, really important gigs, and then it would just sort of kill me afterwards. So it was really, really terrifying. And anyways, this pain kind of amplified in my body, these attacks of pain. I literally became suicidal with it. And I remember like calling my friend at one point and saying to her, like, I was in tears. I was like, I can't live like this. And she said to me, like, you need to sit with it. You need to be with it completely. Like, stop fantasizing about killing yourself. Stop running away from it, and just be with it and see what comes up. And that advice was quite hard to swallow, actually, because, I just wanted to do anything to find a way out. But I did do it, and I found that there was a lot of rage coming up. Part of the rage initially felt like, why is this happening to me, rage? But then it felt like the rage was even deeper than that. And when I had the energy, I would like punch pillows and kick things as much as I could. I felt like it was getting it out of my system. And I spoke to a friend of mine who had ME for like 20 years, and he had recommended something called somatic experiencing, where you sort of sit in the semi-supine position and with your legs slightly apart, and then they start to shake. And this is supposed to be a way of releasing trauma in the body. So I did try that. Not sure how much it helped or not, but certainly the idea that what I was going through had something to do with trauma in my body, it definitely resonated. And yeah, I did sort of try and shake it out as much as I could. So basically, I had obviously gone to the doctors, and the doctors had told me that they'd done the tests and nothing had shown up on the tests. And they said that like after 3 months of having these symptoms, they're going to diagnose it as one of the various things. It could be like chronic fatigue, ME, fibromyalgia, Lyme's disease. There's a lot of these diseases that have those symptoms. And, they generally send you off. Well, they had me booked in basically to go to this chronic fatigue clinic. So I did as much research as I could when I had the energy to. It was hard, but when I had the energy, I reached out to people on Facebook, sending them my symptoms. And I found that, it was true. There was a lot of people with these diseases that had the same symptoms. And I started thinking about it, and I found it really interesting. And I thought, that's bizarre that, we all have these symptoms, but they're not showing up on any tests. Like, what's that about? Another thing I noticed is that these diseases that they had all started from a point of trauma. So it could have been that they were either sick, or they were really kind of getting very wasted at the time. One lady I spoke to with MS had been struck by lightning and then got sick, and then it progressed into MS. Another friend of mine had Lyme's disease and had been bitten. And then at the time, I don't know if it was by a spider or what, but it was bitten by some kind of animal. But she had a virus at the time, and this seemed to kind of turn it into something worse with these awful symptoms. So it then dawned on me that, basically I'd had tinnitus a few years back. And at the time, I couldn't help but notice that, this ringing in my ears was also doing me some favours. Like, it was basically saying constantly, use ear protection, stop damaging your ears, use ear protection. There was no escaping this alarm of warning. And it took me a long time to heal that tinnitus. I worked with lucid dreams to try and get to the bottom of it, to try and speak to my brain to tell it, please turn off this mechanism that's creating the sound. I know the sound isn't out there, it's in my head. And eventually, like, the way I believe that I healed it was having a dream where symbolically I realised that there was a part of me that I wasn't listening to, and that I needed to pay attention to on a deeper level than just like wearing hearing protection. So then I got to thinking that perhaps all these diseases, the symptoms was not of the diseases. Perhaps, in fact, it was the body's way of shutting you down when a trauma happened, so that you wouldn't therefore go and do yourself more harm. Because that's what it seemed to be doing. Now I had to eat. Well, I wasn't even eating, but everything I was consuming was 100% healthy. I was, getting as much regularity in my life as was possible, going to bed at the same time, drinking loads of water. And obviously I wasn't going out, at all. So it did have that effect. And then I got to thinking, okay, so, maybe it's trying to help me. Maybe this is part of my body trying to help me. And I spoke to my flatmate about it, and we had a conversation about how when you're drunk, there's a part of you that, makes you pass out. If you drink too much, there's a part of you that makes you pass out. It comes in and protects you, shuts you down. So I thought, okay, maybe this mechanism is working. He told me that he believed it was the hypothalamus. To be honest, at this point, I didn't do much research on that, so I don't actually know if that is the correct function of the hypothalamus, but could be worth looking into. But I thought, okay, maybe I can communicate with it in the same way that I communicated with my brain to stop the tinnitus. I thought, maybe we can talk about this. It's trying to help me, but actually it's causing me way more stress. I can't work, all this stuff I couldn't do. So I started communicating day and night with my hypothalamus and my subconscious, just telling it, I'm listening to the messages that you're giving me. You don't need to shut my body down. Like, I'm listening to anything that you want to tell me. And I started to see some of the gifts that had come out of this illness. So, for example, I had to focus on one thing at the time. I'm terrible at focusing. I'm normally multitasking all over the shop. But with this disease, or whatever it was, I could only do one thing at the time. There was absolutely no way I could do anything else. And that was really unusual and very strange for me. That also meant that I had to prioritize, because I had to pick the most important thing. And the most important person to see at that time. And, everything was prioritizing. Another thing that was almost like a superhuman skill was the ability to sense what was giving me energy and what was taking energy. It might seem like an obvious thing, but there were all kinds of things that I never even noticed was taking my energy, because I had so much of it that wasn't really a problem. But when I had so little, I became acutely aware of a room that took my energy. Or, for example, like I said, the tree gave me energy. I really felt it. I mean, I feel it now normally, trees are wonderful. But in that state, like, it was even more essential. People, some people take your energy, some people give it. It doesn't mean all the people that take your energy are bad, but it was just, having that awareness of that was quite something. Another plus was that I lost some weight. I've been trying to lose like 1.5 stones forever, and it just fell off. Obviously, I wasn't eating, but it just was like the most, in that respect, effortless weight loss ever, and really fast. So yeah, I think those were the kind of main advantages of it, and I was grateful for that. I was really grateful for all those gifts. And after I acknowledged that, it came through loud and clear, like 4 things that I had to do. So the first thing that came through was some advice that Helen Simmons had given me on Conscious Explorers. Like, I obviously got advice from various people, but I wasn't necessarily doing all of it or listening to all of it. But it came loud and clear, like, do that. She had told me to make a drink with ginger, pepper, turmeric, honey, and lemon. Possibly one of those things I've added, but the pepper and the turmeric and the ginger were definitely there. And then I found out as well that turmeric has curcumin, I think, in it, which is very powerful. It's anti-inflammatory. So that drink was really effective. Another thing that came through was to dry brush. Dry brushing, there's a certain kind of brush. I don't have it to hand now, but you do certain brushing motions all the way up your body. It's very invigorating. It kind of wakes you up. When you're that tired, it was something that I really noticed. I think that it's good for the lymphatic system, but I had not read anywhere that was useful for chronic fatigue symptoms, but it really, really helped. And the other thing that came to me was a cold shower. Have a really freezing cold shower. That gave me a noticeable boost of energy. And the last one, apple cider vinegar, shot of apple cider vinegar. So I started to do all those things, and within a week, I recovered to 90%, and a week later, I was about 110%. I hadn't felt so good. Like, I felt absolutely amazing. So I don't know if those things were the reason, if that or all that happened. It may have been a coincidence, but I think it's certainly something to think about. Like, if you have an illness, I would recommend that perhaps look for the good things that it's bringing you. Even though that sounds counterintuitive, there's probably some gifts that it comes with that you may not have noticed. And secondly, I would say talk to your body. Like, the body is absolutely amazing. It's an incredible, incredible machine that is doing its best to look after you. So rather than see it as the enemy and get annoyed and irritated with it, communicate with it and listen. I would spend a long time listening for anything that would come through. The other little thing that I'd like to just sort of note was one technique that I tried that I found helpful before I started doing this, and this was tuna or twina. Not quite sure how you say it, but it's a wonderful practice. It's like acupuncture without needles, and that helped me like understand my body in a way that I didn't really understand before. It sort of, I don't know, it's weird. They do touch one thing and you see how it's related to another, and there's some kind of communication. So when things were really bad, that was definitely one of the things that gave me a little energy boost. So yeah, I hope that helps you. Feel free to ask any questions, and thanks for listening.